Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting will now come to order. It is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, November 3rd, 2022. The theme of this quarterly meeting is Unlocking America's Democratic Potential by Reducing Inequality in the Classroom. The Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. It is a public meeting and the live broadcast is on YouTube through the National Press Club. I want to welcome our new staff director, Mr. Mark Spencer. This is his first meeting, and I had the opportunity to host him in Miami on day before yesterday, when he witnessed the police and youth conference here in Miami-Dade County at the Dolphin Stadium with the Miami Dolphins, the police departments of Miami-Dade County, and young boys, high school boys from the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project. It was almost 1,000 in attendance, and we were so happy to host Mr. Spencer at that time. So I'm looking forward to working with him. I want to also extend a warm welcome to the commissioners, the staff of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and the members of the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys. We call ourselves commissioners, and also to our public audience. Today, in keeping with the overall objective of the Commission on the Social Status of Black Men and Boys, we aim to exchange ideas and identify policies for empowering Black males to both prosper and participate in public life more fully. This is our best strategy for strengthening American democracy. As I have said in previous meetings, this commission rejects the politics of division. Our goal is to create healthy and equitable communities where everyone is afforded the opportunity to thrive. And I want to say our goal is to create healthy and equitable communities where Black men and boys are afforded the opportunity to thrive, because our commission has given us the actual permission to speak of Black men and boys. Never in this nation has any agency been afforded the opportunity to address the population that we have been afforded to address. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege. And I have been in this work for 30 years. So it's a privilege to be able to say Black men and boys without even thinking about it. With the World Series in full swing, it only seems appropriate to use a baseball metaphor and assert that the commission seeks to ensure that everyone gets their turn in the batter's box, and that includes Black men and boys. We began our work in January, and we deemed the year 2022-2023 as the year of Black men and boys. We want our Black boys to have access to internships, corporate internships, access to higher education, and access to apprenticeships. We know that all Black boys are not going to go to college, so we must afford them opportunities that will give them a piece of the pie in America without having to have a college education. I fought so hard for free community college because here in Miami, we have something at our community college called Rising Black scholars. And it's a 2-year degree, an AA degree that's free for all of the Black boys in our community. And I'm so proud to have helped our community college begin something so earth-shattering. And there are so many opportunities at community colleges that young people can achieve a great education and a great future at a community college. We also need to expose our children to Job Corps. I call Job Corps the best kept secret in the federal government. And I want all of our school children and all of our communities, especially Black boys and men, to know the secrets of Job Corps and how Job Corps can put them on the right track. I also want to expose our boys to Close Up. Close Up is a trip to Washington, D.C. If I had a magic wand, I would wave it and say that every Black boy in America, from the time of first grade to 12th grade, they would get an opportunity to get a trip to Washington to observe the political process and to visit all of the statues and learn about the founding of our nation and how Black slaves built the Capitol. Black male slaves built Washington. And every time I cross the street from my office to the Capitol, I look up at the steeple and I know how many Black men fell to their deaths installing the steeple on the top of the Capitol. And I think that our Black boys across the nation need to know how the Capitol and the Washington, D.C. was built. So I believe in exposure. I believe that we should take our children out of the inner cities where they live. Some people call them ghettos, and expose them to every wonderful opportunity that we can afford as a nation. I know that in the summertime, our little Black boys are in the front yard of their grandmother's house playing in the dirt, and other children are skiing in Aspen. And then they have to return to school and take the same identical high stakes test. And they are expected to make the same score. And we know that that's not going to happen. So those are some of the things that we need to help our children pass through as they become a man, from a Black boy to a man. And because all of these tickets that we're discussing will interrupt the school to prison pipeline, we have to deflate some of the tension that exists between police and youth, because that tension is there. And we know that our young boys have tempers, quick tempers, and they don't understand how to deal with the police. So we have to teach them how to deal with the police, and we need to teach them how to do police, how to deal with our youth. I want to thank and welcome our guest speakers and thank them so much for being with us today and sharing their expertise and their time. I want to welcome Dr. Gregory Hutchinson Jr., Hutchings Jr., Dr. Glenda Prime, Kathy Hollowell, Reverend Dr. James Henry Harris. Thank you so much. And also Dr. Walter Fluker, who will moderate for us. So thank you for being a part of us. And thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with the country today regarding Black men and boys.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you all for this opportunity. I just want to, start off by thanking the Madam Chair for having this discussion and just for the U.S. Commission for even considering to focus on Black men and boys. If you can go to the next slide, I like to center my presentations when I'm talking to folks around my why. And this is near and dear to my heart because I talk about me and my brother because as I served as the superintendent of Alexandria City Public Schools, just a couple of months ago, was my last day, my brother was right down the street in Alexandria City Jail. And he was waiting for his sentencing for a federal crime that he committed, and he has been sentenced since. But I start with him because we have the same parents, we have very similar adverse childhood experiences, and we were put through the same schools. And I asked my brother the first time that he was incarcerated, what was the difference between my walk and your walk? And the one thing that he shared with me that was different was the fact that I had educators in my life from the time I was in kindergarten until I graduated from high school who believed and instilled in me and told me that I can be somebody. And he recalled the time when he was in 6th grade that his teacher told him that he was not going to amount to anything. Right? So my job as I move forward throughout my life is to make sure that we don't have other people experiencing what my brother had to experience, because now, he has to fix his life, which I know he will, right? I know that he will get back on track, but it didn't have to be this way. So we have to understand the power of education. So I like to start with that to get into these 4 specific areas, and we can go to the next slide that I want to share with the commission. The first specific area is dealing with opportunities. And you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry, is dealing with opportunities. And right now we have a serious opportunity to make a difference for our Black male learners across this nation. We all know that race is a social construct that was created to make Black and brown people inferior to the white race, right? Though that is research. It's not just my opinion, right? We also know that there has been a racial reckoning in America for over 400 years. And what we have to do at this particular time is we have to take advantage of this moment where we are seeing the murder of Black men across this nation. And we're seeing that Black men's needs are not being met, whether it's in schools or in the workplace or just in America in general, on multiple levels. And this is an opportunity for the commission to really take advantage of this particular time in life. And if you go to the next slide, I want to run through just a couple of things in regards to our opportunity, and then I'm going to get into where we need to focus and some other areas. So you can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to start with, you all know the late and great Honorable Congressman John Lewis. He talked about the importance of us in America getting into good trouble. And he always talked about how it was necessary trouble and how it could help us to redeem the soul of America. And that has resonated with me from the time I heard that quote. It led me to write my book, which was Getting into Good Trouble at School. Right? If I'm going to get into some trouble and we're talking about education, I'm going to have to get in trouble at school. And I want to talk a little bit about some steps that I know the commission, as well as school systems across this nation, can do to help our Black male learners. So if you can go to the next slide. I want to start with, in the next slide, please, I want to start with knowing your history. And I think that, as we heard from our Madam Chair today, and she talked about some of the historical facts in regards to how the Capitol was built by Black men, right? When we teach our history, right, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that will allow us to rewrite our future. Because what happens in America is that time repeats itself, history repeats itself. And it's because people aren't familiar with it. So folks are using same tactics that have been used for many years. And if you don't understand that storyline, then it's hard for you to have a rebuttal or a counter narrative to what is being shared with us. So we have to begin with knowing our history. The second thing, and you can go to the next slide, is focusing on a commitment to racial equity, and not just equity, but racial equity. When we're talking about serving the needs of our Black male learners, and I love the fact that this commission is focused on Black men and boys, we have to make sure we're calling out specifics in regards to race. It makes people uncomfortable, but many people do not have the right to be comfortable. So we have to lean into our discomfort, and we have to make sure that we are supporting and pushing people to go into their discomfort space so that they can grow and that they can learn, so that our Black male learners can achieve. Our next slide. Next, in regards to our opportunity, is just making sure that we are finding ways to dismantle de facto segregation. And we know this happens in school systems across this nation, from tag programs, magnet programs, programs that require some form of prerequisites or recommendations that are required in order to be in a particular course, whether it's advanced placement or an honors program, right? We have to make sure that we are dismantling those de facto segregation practices, because what it is doing, it is dividing our Black students as well as their white counterparts. So we have to ensure that we are identifying some of these challenges within our schools, and that we're being bold enough to really push the envelope and to dismantle that. Next slide. Specifically, opportunity for us is to really think about the fact that we have discipline versus policing, right? We have to make sure that in our schools, we are not setting up structures where our young people are treated as if they are prisoners. I recall visiting a school, a charter school, and the principal was excited that the Black students were walking down the halls with their hands behind their backs, looking to the floor. And he was saying, look how quiet our students are. And that was a celebration for him. And I said, I was appalled. I was appalled at the fact that these young Black kids, one, are walking with their hands in their backs, but that they're looking down on the floor and in line and quiet, and you're praising them for that. That's the same thing that we're doing to prisoners in school. So we're setting up that pipeline to prison with these practices and thinking that's okay. Kids should be able to look up. Kids should be able to explore. Kids should be able to give some free range so they can learn self-control and how do you act in a public space, but not being mild and meek. You mirror that to how we were treated when we were slaves, right? Those are the same kind of strategies that were used to keep us, quote unquote, tamed. And we have to get that out of our schools and our school systems across this nation. The next slide is dealing with the strategic thinking and strategic planning. Many school systems have strategic plans, but many are not strategically thinking their way to achieve these goals in their plans, right? We have to make sure we're being methodical and we're being extremely strategic in our approaches to serving the needs of our students. I say strategic thinking is a skill. Strategic planning, that is the resource or the roadmap to get you to wherever you're trying to go as an organization. And then the other opportunity that we have for the commission is really, you go to the next slide, is having courageous and bold leadership, right? It does require for us to really be courageous and bold when we are trying to do this work for Black male learners across America, right? We continue, I know I do, I stand on the shoulders of so many Black people, like the late and great Honorable John Lewis, and I think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I think of people who have paved the way even in the present, right? Think of our president, our former president, my forever president, President Obama, who has been able to start things, like My Brother's Keeper, right? That focused on Black male learners. Think of Congresswoman Wilson, who has started 5,000 role models of excellence. I mean, that is a phenomenal program that is now national in ensuring that our Black male learners have the supports and representation so that they can be successful. And next, I want to go into why we need to have a focus, not just, we have these opportunities, but we really need to have an educational focus. And I'm asking the commission to focus specifically on prenatal to post-secondary. And specifically, what I want us to be able to do is to ensure that we provide the necessary resources for our families before the child is even born, to make sure that they have the appropriate care so that they can have the brain development that they're going to need to be successful when they get into a classroom, and so that we are not putting our Black male learners into an environment where they are literally already behind everyone else around them, meaning their white counterparts in particular. We need to make sure that at the middle grades level that we are focusing on social, emotional, and academic learning, right? Math and English, they're very important. Science and social studies, don't get me wrong, they're important too. But the social and emotional health of our young Black males is just as important. And we cannot wait until they are in a crisis to provide those services. These are things that we should be doing consistently throughout our time. And then we also need to focus on our secondary and our post-secondary education. I heard our Madam Chair Wilson talk about the fact that we need to have workforce development and the program that was in Florida for an associate's degree while these young Black males were in high school, right? We need to make sure that we have structures that are set up to set these Black males for success, right? We need to make sure that they have the foundational skills. So if they are put into these extracurricular or career technical education programs, that they have those skills to be able to thrive and to be successful. So I'm asking the commission to make that a commitment. Let's go to the next slide and let's talk about in specifics a model or an example of what our Black males deserve. For example, a young Black male should be able to walk into a school where there is representation, not just by the educators who are in that space, but also by the literature that they are reading, the posters that are on the walls, the names that are being used in their classrooms. It really does matter. You know, I go back to the story of me and my brother. I was fortunate to have Black women who were teachers of mine in kindergarten with Miss Murphy, in second grade with Miss Lewis, in sixth grade with Miss Johnson, in high school when I had, you know, Miss Barnwell, who said, you're going to go to Old Dominion University. And I didn't know why, but it's because that was her alma mater, right? And that's where I ended up going undergrad, you know, to school and getting a scholarship. We need to make sure that we have people who can understand the walks of these young Black males' lives. And that is going to be so important and key. And then we also need to make sure that we are focusing on having these structures so that these young men can have the mentorship like 5,000 role models, or mentorship like in Oakland, where they have an African-American male initiative that focuses specifically on African-American males in schools. We need to ensure that this is happening at all of our schools across America. In the next slide, and I want to finally talk about action and where the commission can go. And there's 11 specific things. I'm going to go quickly because I know we only have 18 minutes and I'm looking at my time. So I want to make sure that you all as a commission, that you're walking away with some tangible action steps that can be taken across this nation that can make a difference, you know, not only for our Black male learners, but for young people across the entire nation. And we can go to the next slide. You know, I already touched on the fact that it is going to be important for all of us to ensure that we are making sure that we are removing those barriers in regards to technology. And I have to say this, during the pandemic, we think back when we shut down all of our schools, right? And we shut down all of our businesses. And the government was able to come up with dollars to provide broadband, to provide technology devices for students, to have buses that had access to the internet in communities that didn't have internet. And we were able to do that in one of the greatest crises in our time, right? So that needs to be mandatory moving forward, because our Black male learners, and many of them who live in some of these urban or rural communities, may not have access to broadband, may not have access to some of these technology resources. What the commission can do is really advocate to ensure that all children and that all families have access to the internet. That really is a lifeline to our success and to their success. We need to make sure that we have universal pre-K. This is a total, you know, we talk about it all the time. We funded, you know, a pandemic for schools. We provided ESSER funds for schools across this nation. We can provide universal preschool. And not just any type of preschool, but a preschool that includes play, that includes opportunities for parental resources and opportunities for families to be engaged in their child's learning. And that should be mandatory. The same way every child goes to kindergarten, every child needs to go to preschool. And that's the only way we're going to see a difference. Go to the next slide because I can't go through every single one of these. But I also want to make sure that we are focused on the social, emotional, and academic learning piece. And I said this before, we need to have social workers, counselors, psychologists in our schools. You know, we need to make sure, and it's not even just for our students, our staff in schools have been impacted. They have dealt with a significant trauma. You know, everybody is right now. So it will behoove us to ensure that we have quality resources that impact social, emotional, academic learning for all of our students, not just our Black males. And I think another most important piece is financial literacy. We talk about our economy. We want it to grow. We want to see our Black male families or our Black families across this nation to have that generational wealth. It is going to be important for us to start at an early age to provide that financial literacy. So our Black males, they can become Black men who understand the dollar, right? Who understand how do you contribute to this economy, who understands what savings is all about, to understand that you need to own a piece of America, right? But when you own a piece of America, that there are things that you can also do to have that generational wealth for generations to come, right? So it's not just providing you the financial resources for your time, but also for your children and your children's children and their children that you don't even know about. And you can go to the next slide. And finally, I just want to talk about the fact that we need to make sure that we are providing, developmental initiatives that relate to fatherhood initiatives, right? For our young Black men to grow up to be good fathers, we have to make sure that early on, we are providing those skills. We're giving them access to the importance of being strong Black men in our Black families so that they can know what it takes to be a good Black father. And when we do that, I know that we will be able to achieve. And I'm going to stop here. I see that Mr. Spencer's come on. So I'm going to stop here. You can go to the next slide because I'm going to end with just this final quote from a woman next slide, from a woman that right here, that I strongly admire. Her name, in addition to Congresswoman Wilson, but her name is Mary Frances Winters, and she wrote the book called Black Fatigue. And the reason why this book resonates with me is because it gave me language for all this work that we're trying to do for Black males. It is tiring and it is exhausting and it is fatiguing, right? And it is important for us to build professional capacity so that we are able to endure this very tough road that we all are going to have to go down in order to provide an equitable education for our Black male learners in America. So thank you.